Hi, I'm Daniel Dresner. You know what a turtle is?
Hi, I'm Anne Marie Cox. And Dan, I'll tell you about my mother.
Welcome to Space the Nation, where we look at science fiction through the lens of private orders and
metacognitive strategies. Today, we're continuing our AIs of March series, and that is our series about AIs that identify as female in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be talking about Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, The Final Cut. Dan, already confusion.
Yes.
Really. Like...
That is the version we are doing, just to be clear. But go ahead.
I think I watched that, but my version had narration.
Oh, no, that is not the version you did then. No.
Then Apple... I blame Apple.
Okay, see, I did it. It's obviously available to rent or buy on Prime, on Apple.
Many different places, but don't do it from Apple, because Apple, I'll send you a screenshot. It says
The Final Cut.
The Final Cut.
See, maybe Apple has it right and Prime doesn't, but I did The Final Cut, and there's no voiceover narration. I think that's accurate. Yeah.
The Final Cut should not have narration.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But this movie,
yeah,
there's a lot to talk about, basically.
Yeah.
We can start with the ending, almost, in what we talk about. But Dan saw the Final Cut, which sounds like the real Final Cut. I saw the version that has narration, although it also has the restored or the reshot scene of Zora, the Zora chase.
Oh, yeah. Huh, interesting.
So I don't know what weird hybrid replicant version.
Maybe, we're in this world where AI creates content. Maybe there's an AI cut as far as that just mashes everything up. That's a possibility. We can't really rule that out.
Well, we both saw Blade Runner.
Yes.
We both saw
a version of Blade Runner.
The next couple of things we're going to be doing, I'm more certain that we're going to be examining the same text, both of us at the same time. Martha Wells' Murderbot series. We're going to do the first book in that. Mm-hmm. And Kazu Ishiguro's Clara and the Sun.
Yes, because we're classing up the joint. We figured we should do some,
We're doing the sci-fi that people who are snooty like, which sometimes...
Is that an Obama or a Bummer one? I hadn't thought about that, but we might need
Oh my God, it might be.
It could be.
That is the kind of thing he would consider sci-fi.
Yeah.
So...
I'm
looking. I love that series, so I kind of hope that it is. But looking forward to reading that, no matter what. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things when people find out I like science fiction, they're like, "Oh, have you read? Like, you don't like science fiction?"
So it does fit into that. We should make sure and see whether it fits into that category. It actually would.
Yeah.
By the way, if you started hearing this and you heard ads, that's probably because you're not a patron. And might I suggest becoming a patron? If you go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/spacethenation, you can join for as little as $3 a month. Besides avoiding all those pesky ads, you also get early access to our podcasts. You get access to our monthly AUAs. You get access to our Discord channel, which is just a fantastic group of people that we're smart enough to select as a special patrons-only episode, The Hunt for Red October, which we still need to record, and which will be available.
We will record that. Yeah. I want to do it as our April Fool's episode.
Oh, right. Yes.
And start a tradition of sorts where we get to do a non-sci-fi body of work.
Right. Although this is only going to be for the patrons. No one else is going to hear this one.
So that is true. And we still have already said we are going to do Michael Clayton because that's just a fucking awesome movie. Yeah. And we're going to be doing Andor. So it makes sense. I think it takes place in the same world as Andor.
I think that's a good way of thinking about it. Yes.
Just a few hundred years or hundreds of light years different.
Right. It's like the Zack Snyder verse where I think he said Army of the Dead and whatever that
300?
No.
I like the idea of 300 and Army of the Dead.
That is amusing. No, Rebel Moon was supposed to be part of the same.
Okay.
What I do love, by the way, is that you've already forgotten that Rebel Moon exists. We actually talked about it for an episode, which is fair enough because it was 2 or 3 months ago. It's completely erased it's like Mercury. It's gone from my mind as well. Just it's worth saying.
Yeah, not a very memorable movie. An episode worth listening to. Oh, yeah. Not a movie worth watching.
Yes, exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
So yes, you have the special episodes. You have early access to regular episodes. You have the Discord, and you have the knowledge that you are helping support a labor of love with a vibrant community behind it, which is the only kind of podcast that really has any kind of traction, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, podcasting has turned into the TV business, basically. So we are your local community access station. That's what we are.
We're your local independent bookstore.
There you go. So become a patron and you can avoid ads and all the other stuff. Now, Blade Runner.
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Why are we talking about Blade Runner?
So obviously it's the Ides of March, and this does fit perfectly into that because there are plenty of female replicants that we will be discussing in this film. But I also think in some ways this is just a fascinating intersection with a number of recent overlapping themes. Harrison Ford playing a charming asshole. Yeah, this movie has got that, although we'll talk about how charming he is in a little bit. There are some bizarre connections to The Shining, I believe, which we also...
big one, yeah.
Which we talked about for Cold Sci-Fi Winter. And it is Denis Villeneuve adjacent, and our previous episode was about Dune Part 2.
Well, our previous episode, yes, that we have not recorded yet because we're in a weird time warp. Yes.
I'm trying to maintain the illusion for the listeners, Anna. Come on.
I just believe in total transparency.
That's true.
That's what I believe.
Fair enough.
This is our second Ridley Scott movie.
Is it only our second? I mean, I know we did Alien, but
did we do Aliens too? We did Aliens.
Well, Aliens was James Cameron.
We did that. You're right. That's Cameron.
Yeah.
So game over, man.
No, I think you're right. I think this is only our second Ridley Scott film. At some point, we should probably do The Martian, but that I don't know how many others there are in his.
I'd be willing to do any number of his movies. I think that he is a very interesting filmmaker.
Yeah.
And between this and Alien, I mean,
yeah,
two of the most influential.
He's just directed two of the most influential sci-fi movies of all time. Yeah, totally fine. Yeah. And also two films, by the way, with extremely different aesthetics.
Yes, but also kind of related. I could believe that they take place in the same universe.
Yeah, you can see the origins of is it Weyland-Yutani Corporation, or I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's overlap. Don't get me wrong. But what's interesting is that, I mean, and we'll talk about this, the strongest element of this film is that it's an aesthetic that, the way I would put it is that I think this film is to space noir as Casablanca is to ordinary, film noir, in that people who have grown up not watching the original version of this, I don't know if you've had this experience where people who grew up loving film noir but had never seen the original Casablanca then see it and are I don't understand, what's the big deal, not realizing it's the text. And that's kind of how I feel about Blade Runner.
I'm interested that you think Casablanca is film noir.
Well, I don't know if it's noir. I'm trying to...
I would say The Maltese Falcon.
Okay.
Because that's classic film noir, and also Humphrey Bogart.
Right.
And also one of those movies that you think you've seen.
Yeah.
And this movie, we will just move down our list of things to talk about because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah. No, we got a lot to talk.
We could hit a lot of cul-de-sacs here. Mm-hmm. Will this podcast ruin it for people, Dan? Should they turn this off right now and go watch and then come back?
I'm going to be a little controversial and say no, in the sense that if you have not seen it or have not seen it in a while, this is a vibes film way more than a plot film. Okay. In the sense of our describing Vangelis's soundtrack is not the same thing as hearing it. So you do not need to have seen this film recently in order to listen to this podcast. Now, that said, obviously watch the film. It's a freaking touchstone. And I would, you would probably benefit a little bit from watching a more recent version. And again,
and having
the final cut.
It. Yeah. Yes. I almost want to say you can see any version of it, really.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, it bears rewatching. Mm-hmm. I also think if you literally have not seen it,
go see it. Yes, you should
stop the podcast.
Yeah,
go watch it and then come back. It bears rewatching. I think even if you have seen it relatively recently and listened to this, you might want to see it again. It's a lot more subtle and problematic than I realized it the first 20 times I saw it.
Yeah.
There is a lot there, intentionally and unintentionally. Mm-hmm. And the ways that it's problematic, which we will get into, are interesting.
Yeah, it's not... there are ways...
It's not like a cancellation thing.
Yeah.
There's no this should be canceled. It's more,
Let's put it this way. There are moments when you watch this film, you're going to feel bad a little bit. You're like, oh, this isn't quite what I remembered. But that said, no, this is obviously a film that holds up for a variety of reasons.
And it has aged remarkably well, except for being set in 2019.
Yes. Yeah. And I have to admit, I'm not gonna, like, literally, when the film opens, Los Angeles, November 2019, and then you see that first shot, I just started laughing. Because, like, it's an amazing shot, but it is not Los Angeles in November 2019. So,
and it also has newspapers and payphones.
Yeah.
It gets a lot right about what I think the future still could be. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a vision of the future that's both dated and still seems prescient, still seems like a plausible future.
There are very few films out there that I think that develop an aesthetic that is so original that you think, oh, that also seems plausible. And this is one of them, is the way I would put it. And so that it's the highest compliment you can pay to the film. And also the number of times it has been copied is just endless.
People, again, it's the film noir thing, whether or not you think film noir is Casablanca or Maltese Falcon, you think that this is just the way the future is supposed to look, because it's become the shorthand for what our dark dystopia looks like.
But this was...
But no, they invented it.
I say, this is Ridley Scott and Vangelis and Douglas Turnbull and all of them, at the top of their game in terms of inventing it. Yeah.
What was your previous experience, Dan?
I don't think I saw this film originally in the theaters. I'm pretty sure I saw it on cable or whatever when it, about 5 or 10 years later. I'm also not going to lie. I think I was pretty underwhelmed the first time I saw it. And I stand by that in the sense of, it probably, first of all, was because I saw the theatrical cut. And I remember not being terribly all that savvy about film, thinking, Jesus Christ, Harrison Ford is talking a lot in terms of the voiceover narration. But even now watching it again, there are parts that I'm in awe of, and this is not Alien is the way I would put it, which is a near perfect film. What about you, Anna?
Well, I saw it in the theater, which...
Wait, what?
I mean, looking back... Yeah,
I was 10. Oh, jeez.
Dan, I was 10.
No!
And I'm writing a book about being raised by an alcoholic, and, tell me you were raised by an inattentive parent without telling me you were raised by an inattentive parent.
Listeners, I just want to be very clear. Under no circumstance should you show your child any version of this film when they are only 10 years old. Do not do that. That's just some parenting advice I am offering for free.
I am also quite sure that I begged to see it because I wanted to see Han Solo.
Right, yeah.
I am positive that was the chain of events. Was like, okay, all right, Anna, you want to see your already problematic fave because you're 10 Han Solo, already attracted to bad boys. Okay, sure. Let's go.
Anna, I actually think we need to do a special spin-off podcast called Sci-Fi Psychiatrist, where we talk to people about what their foundational memories were in terms of sci-fi, and did it affect their relationships in the future?
Did it affect? Yeah. Did I fall for some problematic faves and charming assholes? Yes, I did.
Yes. Whereas I was my problem would have been in Star Trek, where you always have the Shatner love interesting. What is love? Like that.
Okay. Got a little glimpse into Dan's psyche.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah. So, I'll do that later. I just wanted to share a little bit to indicate you're not the only one that occasionally, has to deal with this sort of thing.
I appreciate that, Dan. Thank you so much.
All right, let's get to the story behind the story, because there's a lot. Anna, I almost dare you to do this portion like Harrison Ford does voiceover narration. Oh, hold on.
Dan. There's a lot of backstory to this movie. And I've had a belly full of backstory. Directors aren't supposed to have to. Neither are film studios. What the hell happened to this movie? One ending is as phony as another. I don't know why a film would collect endings. They only needed memory.
Oh.
Anyway, so that I sound half asleep. Did I sound as though I had just woken from a doze?
That was pretty good, actually. Yeah, that wasn't quite Mark Hamill worthy, but like, because Hamill's impersonation of Harrison Ford is amazing. But like, he's a voice actor. But yeah, it was pretty good.
I was mainly just trying to express the fact that was not quite fully awake.
Yes, which works. Yeah.
Yes, Harrison Ford, not a fan of his own narration, and I think there is a theory that he was like trying to sort of subtly tank it.
Oh, did he try to ditch? I hadn't. No, that I hadn't heard that.
He intentionally did a bad job so that it would maybe not be used or something. I feel like there's no way that he was trying to do a good job. Because he can do good narration.
Yeah.
Like, this is not good narration. Anyway, so yes, probably one of the most influential science fiction films ever made. There are books, there are documentaries. I'm not going to do too much with this. If you are curious, there's a lot out there. I do want to recommend H. Bomber Guy did a YouTube video about the director's cuts.
Oh.
Like about all the different director's cuts, which I found really interesting. And it's also he is also using the director's cut as a example of the role of VHS and Betamax in our culture, and kind of looking at the reproductive technologies available to us.
Almost replicative, as it were. Yeah. Okay.
Heavy Spoilers, which is another favorite YouTube channel of mine, did a deep dive on it. The book that people go to for this is Future Noir by Paul Salmon, which is pretty exhaustive.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many academic essays and critical examinations of it. I mean, if you're curious, you just get typing. Yeah. Get typing. And then I have in my notes here, Dan, should we talk about the endings before we get to the endings? Or should we just wait till we get to the endings?
Let's get to the endings. Let's talk about it when we get to there, because I think it fits a little bit better.
As I said, I am not sure which version I watched. I'm pretty sure it was not the final cut, and I blame Apple. I'm actually kind of frustrated.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's not. I mean, it's Apple's fault.
Yeah,
it's not your fault. Like, why are things so hard sometimes, Dan? Why are things so hard? Chekhov's What's It? That's our thing that occurs the beginning first act of the movie and then comes back later.
Yep.
What do you got?
Chekhov's unicorn. I mean, it was an obvious one, but it seems appropriate.
I have Chekhov's shiny eyes.
Ooh, I like that one. That one is good.
Yeah.
When do exactly
eyes are kind of important in
yes,
this movie.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of a theme. Kind of a motif, as it were. Okay, let's get to the plot so we can talk and dive into this film. Act 1, Tough Tests. Los Angeles, November 2019. A city of unrelenting rain. Big neon advertisements, street noodle bars, and the omnipresent Tyrell Corporation. Tyrell manufactures AI robots called replicants. Tyrell's Nexus 6 replicants, at least as smart as humans and much stronger, are used for off-world exploration and colonization. Then, one group of replicants mutinies, ruining it for the rest of us. I mean, the rest of the replicants. And they are declared illegal on Earth. The Nexus 6 replicants have a planned obsolescence after 4 years, after which it's time to die. Deckard is an ex-cop, ex-Blade Runner, not currently hunting down replicants, until Officer Gaff takes him to his old boss, Bryant, who exposits that 4 replicants killed a lot of humans and are now on Earth. Bryant orders Deckard to retire Leon, who killed another Blade Runner, and other replicants, Roy Batty, Jorah, and Pris, before the news goes public. Deckard goes to the Tyrell Corporation to see if a Nexus 6 replicant can pass their standard test. The CEO offers up his assistant Rachel to see how the test fails on a human. From the test, however, Deckard tells Tyrell that Rachel is a replicant who believes she is human. Tyrell explains that she is an experiment, who has been given false memories to provide an emotional cushion, and that she does not know her true nature. All right, Anna, let's talk world building. It's pretty good. Pretty good.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Although, again, I feel sorry for the kids who are going to see this and not realize how good it is.
Yeah, no. They're going to be like, wait, what? They're reading a paper. That's dumb. There's no phones. That's dumb. Smartphones. That's dumb.
Or they're just going to think like this aesthetic existed. It has always existed.
Mm-hmm.
And it has not. This is the film that invented it. And if anything, all it does to the extent the aesthetic existed beforehand, it's noir. That's what it is. I mean, and that's why, as ham-fisted as the narration is, there is a part of me that kind of likes it because I love noir. And
because it's an element of noir.
And as people who listen to the podcast know, it's an element of noir. And as people who listen to the podcast know, like my favorite micro genre is noir sci-fi. And now we've done the little bit of psychological examination of how movies shaped Anna. But I'm sure this movie is one reason why that's my favorite micro genre, is that I got exposed to it so young. And I didn't say this when we were talking about previous exposure. I did fall in love with this movie even at age 10. Like I immediately loved the whole look of it. I immediately loved like the ways that it felt familiar and new at the same time. Although mostly it feels familiar. That's the kind of weird thing about it, right? Is like
almost like an implanted memory.
Yes, Dan. Which is how it functions for people who haven't seen it, right?
That's an interesting way of putting it.
The way that it functions.
Yeah, it's almost like a Jungian implanted memory. I kind of like that. Yeah, that actually works. This is like the most superficial critique I can offer. I don't understand why they kept saying it was Los Angeles. It's just weird that it's LA. And just in sort of the constant rain and so on and so forth.
Where would you make it?
I don't know, maybe San Francisco, actually. Like, San Francisco would have been a little more believable given the weather. But, like, it is a pissant criticism, and listeners should feel free to piss on Dresner for even suggesting that, because it doesn't matter that it's set at Los Angeles. The vibe is just amazing. It's like the first 15 minutes for Alien, except the first 15 minutes for Alien nails not just the setting, but the characters. Whereas the first 15 minutes of this, the characters are kind of ciphers, but the vibe, holy crap, it's just, amazing.
I will shout out to, though, already Harrison Ford is charismatically top of his game. I mean, the character is questionable, but he's magnetic. He's effortless in this role. Like, it is a little bit if Han Solo was just a total dick and not kind of a dick.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But
he's Harrison Ford, and so he pulls it off. Yeah.
Although
we'll talk about this in a second.
Yeah, so maybe we should talk about it in a second. Why don't you keep going?
Let's get to Act 2, Fake Snakes. Deckard searches Leon's hotel room and finds a bunch of old pictures along with a snake scale. Returning to his apartment, he finds Rachel waiting for him, trying to prove that she's really human. Deckard explains to her that her memories have been implanted, and Rachel vamooses. Meanwhile, Roy and Leon find out that the person who knows the most about replicant engineering is one J.F. Sebastian. Pris stakes out Sebastian's place and befriends him. Deckard tracks the snake scale to its genetic engineer and then its owner at a strip club, where he finds Jorah working. After a very creepy dressing room interaction, Jorah knocks down Deckard. He pursues and kills her through a lot of glass windows, with Leon witnessing it all nearby. All right, Anna, let's talk about Harrison Ford's performance in his character. As you say, this is a much more humorless, charming asshole compared to the Han Solo that we saw and talked about in The Empire Strikes Back. And I do think it makes it much harder to care about the character. There's a disconnect. There's a weird disconnect between the way he understands Rachel's theory of mind when he conducts the Voight-Kampff test, saying, wait, she's a replicant, but she doesn't know she's a replicant, and talks to Tyrell about that. But when he actually talks to Rachel in his apartment, he's just a dick in terms of talking about it. And it's very weird. I mean, there's no version of this where I think it makes that much sense, except Deckard's a dick.
Yeah, and a flaw in the movie is the lack of chemistry between Harrison Ford and Sean.
Yeah, it's a big problem. It's a big, I would argue it's potentially the biggest problem.
I think so. Yeah. I think it might be the biggest problem in the movie, because if there was chemistry, then it actually would almost make his turn to her make more sense if he's struggling with attraction to a replicant.
Right. I agree with that. Right? Yeah, exactly. But it sort of comes out of nowhere.
Doesn't seem to be struggling with attraction to a replicant. He just seems to decide he doesn't like her very much. Right. And then we get one of the weirdest scenes to me, having not seen it in many years, was when he calls Rachel from the bar.
Yeah, which didn't make any. Again, it comes out of nowhere, and it's
he drunk tells her. Yeah, and I'm like, wait, is he supposed to already be in love with her?
I guess, yeah, or it was guilt. I don't. It makes it again. There's lots in this film that is good. This part doesn't make much sense to me. And like whether or not you think Deckard is a replicant or not, that in some ways it's almost immaterial. The motivation for why he cares about Rachel suddenly, it's just a heel turn and it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, and it needs to make sense for it to be a great movie.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's why I think it is the central flaw of the film.
Yeah.
And I don't know who to blame. Part of me, I don't want to blame Sean Young. I think Sean Young can be a terrific actress, and I think she's good in this role. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's Ridley Scott. I love.
You don't want it to be Harrison Ford.
I don't want to blame him, but part of me wonders if it is him or if it's a problem with the role. But if we're going to blame somebody, I think it might be Harrison.
Yeah. I think I read an anecdote like a decade or two ago that Sean Young, I don't think enjoyed filming a lot of this with him.
Not.
And I think like at one point after the film was done, maybe it was like a premiere walk or something, like she actually walked up to Harrison Ford and said, "Hi, I'm Sean Young. We just work, we work together." Which Harrison Ford found utterly charming and of course was, just great, but like it's a thing.
Yeah. I do want to say that another thing that jumped out at me watching this again, it's probably been 10 years now since I've seen it.
Yeah.
The scenes with Zora, I think I did not appreciate them thoroughly for the first few times I saw it. It's actually a really creepy, really wonderful scene. Harrison Ford is actually great in that moment where he's pretending to be the morals instructor. He has a little bit of a comic. Yeah. It's the only comic turn in the entire movie.
Yes. He's right. Let me put it this way. It's a credit to Harrison Ford that I think he knows he's playing that in a creepy way, and it works incredibly well. And it's not something you normally think of. That's not a shade of Harrison Ford you normally think about in his performances, but it works absolutely perfectly in that scene.
And also that chase scene is in the chase scene with her. I do remember it from the original version as being not very good. It stands out as being not very good in the original version. And that's one of the places where Ridley Scott did some pretty serious reshoots and reinsertions, and it is beautiful in a remaster.
No, they actually shot stuff in 2007 to match with that film. And my understanding, again, is that apparently Joanna Cassidy actually came back and like that they needed her for a day of filming. She was delighted to discover that she still fit in the original outfit. So,
and that is quite an outfit.
Yes, I was going to say, that is a fantastic outfit. Yes.
That is quite an outfit. Yeah. That outfit made an impact on me, just as like something like to remember. It's not like something I aspire to necessarily, but like it's a striking
It's visually stunning.
Outfit.
It really is. It's like, okay, I remember that. So yeah.
I also want to say the sound design in that scene is incredible. I don't know if you were noticing or thinking about it, but one of the things that happens is that everything dies out except for when he's shooting her.
Right.
All of this incredible crowd noise.
Yeah, it's suddenly
very loud.
Right. It suddenly fades away. Yeah.
And there's a heartbeat underneath.
Oh, I didn't pick that up. Damn it. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I also specifically the crowd noise has cross now.
Yes.
Move on.
Yeah.
Move on. Move on. It's kind of beautiful, like in how smart and textural that is.
The other thing I will say, it's a little more obvious, but I still did appreciate it, is the fact that when Jorah is killed, you see all these mannequins surrounding her, which is obviously like, just a great visual note for it. So this is a movie where it is flawed, but oh God, the care put into a lot of this is stunning and pays off.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we can say. Why Ridley Scott is worth talking about, even when he misfires, is one of the things that you and I both love and are willing to grant a lot of grace to any movie where the person making it has a vision.
Yeah, and this is definitely a vision.
He always has a vision.
Yeah, that's
always.
True. Okay, we will be back right after these messages about how to avoid accelerated decrepitude.
And we're back. Dan, please continue.
All right, let's get to Act 3, Not Quite Time to Die. Bryant tells Deckard that Rachel has been added to his kill list. Deckard then sees Rachel on the street, but before he can get to her, Leon ambushes him and knocks his gun away. Just as Leon is about to kill Deckard, Rachel saves the day by shooting him with Deckard's gun. They return to Deckard's apartment. Rachel contemplates fleeing, and Deckard promises not to hunt her, but does note that others likely will. Deckard passes out, and Rachel looks around. She starts to leave, but then Deckard grabs her and turns a no into a yes, I guess. Anna, I'm going to defer to you on this one. This was the scene that is like the most problematic, I think.
And a couple of sort of contextual notes.
Yeah.
One is that what we already discussed, which is that apparently it wasn't so much that they didn't get along well, I guess, is that there was no chemistry and maybe people knew there was no chemistry. And I think what I read is they tried to film this scene as a little more of a traditional romantic encounter.
Oh, and it doesn't quite work?
And it didn't work.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And this is where we have a little blame on Ridley Scott, that Ridley Scott told Ford to push her around a little.
Oh.
Like to make it more aggressive.
And did Sean Young, she didn't know that was coming when
I don't know. Okay. Oh, wait. Yes, I do know. Okay. She didn't know it was coming.
She did or did not?
Did not.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now, Sean Young, in contemporaneous interviews, has a softer kind of version of it. I don't know what she said more recently. I guess she's not come out and said anything horrible about it, or I think we'd all know. But in a contemporaneous interview, it's funny because you can tell she's uncomfortable. Like it's one of those. Before they had electronic press kits, it's one of the round of interviews she's doing, right? It's probably third or fourth or fifth or sixth of the day. Right. And this guy's like, I have to ask you about the love scene with Harrison Ford. And she clearly is like, yeah, okay. Yeah. And because he's like, so exciting. And she makes a joke about, oh, just that thing. And the joke is like, oh, of course, who wouldn't want to, have a romance scene with Harrison Ford, but she's clearly not into it. But the interviewer, this many years ago, decades ago, says something about how I think it might be controversial. And she says, well, I'll tell you what my read on it is that Rachel does not have any experience in romance or intimacy.
Huh. That's actually not a bad interpretation. Yeah.
When he's telling her what to do, it is because she genuinely doesn't know.
Yeah.
How to respond in those situations.
I like that interpretation, I have to say. I don't know if it quite works, but I get why Sean Young went to that spot in terms of interpretation.
And I think that can be true, and also Deckard is a asshole.
Yeah.
I like having her read on that, in part because these situations are hard to navigate. There is not always one story about what happens, even inside the head of the person that it's happening to.
But I mean, let's put it this way. The other thing is, this is a staple of noir. I mean, the idea of, and so in that sense, this way, weirdly, that scene might have been the scene where it's like, oh yeah, this is definitely noir. Like that felt the most consistent with noir.
What really makes it not work, though, is that you don't buy that they're attracted to each other.
Exactly. No, it really doesn't. Like, again, zero. Like, I think we have to go back to Gattaca.
He also has a scene. I mean, he also has a scene with Carrie Fisher where they say where he turns a no into a yes.
But that was
like, oh yeah.
Like that was like, yep, no, she's saying yes.
Yeah.
The way I would put it is, we have to go back to Gattaca, I think, to find a pairing that had less chemistry on the screen. And that's, again,
I would say Contact. I still think in our Hall of Fame, lack of chemistry Hall of Fame, Matthew McConaughey and Jodie Foster are like.
Yep, no, that's fair. Totally fair. But Gattaca also. So yeah, we can add this one to it. All right.
Like the true love story in Gattaca is Ethan Hawke and Jude Law. We all know that.
Anyway, Roy arrives at Sebastian's apartment and tells Pris that Jorah and Leon are dead. Roy uses Sebastian's chess game with Tyrell to enter Tyrell's penthouse. He demands more life from his maker, which Tyrell explains.
Okay, I want to pause you a second, because that's a really good scene, and using the chess game doesn't quite get across how fun it is.
Yes, that's correct. Okay.
It's kind of a password, but also a sign that something is happening it makes Tyrell curious.
Right, Tyrell, it's suddenly you don't see a lot of him in this film, but this is clearly a man who is bored by everything. He actually, in some ways, there's a strong parallel to Oscar Isaac's Nathan character in Ex Machina.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah. But and so this is the one moment in the entire film where he's like, oh wait, this is not what I was expecting. This is interesting. And so so he lets him in. Asks for more life. Tyrell explains that this is biologically impossible. Roy cops to the fact that he has done quote, questionable things, end quote. But Tyrell dismisses this, noting how well Roy is designed and so on and so forth. Roy kisses his father and then kills him by crushing his skull. Sebastian tries to flee, and Roy clearly kills him as well. I think another reason why this film is so iconic is the casting. It's just a murderer's row. So in terms of supporting performances that I love, Daryl Hannah as Pris is amazing. Especially, I think this might have been her first film role. Or it was one of her
it's
first.
Early for sure.
It's before Splash, I know that. And she's, she does a lot with a little. But I think like the Hall of Fame in terms of like doing a lot with a little is Edward James Olmos as Graf. I mean,
who doesn't speak in English.
Right. He like barely said I think maybe as many lines as Boba Fett, and he like folds origami things, but like just the way he walks, it's a meal. He makes a meal out of it. It's amazing. But there are plenty of other performances. What are your faves?
Emmett Walsh.
Yeah.
I mean, there is an Emmett Walsh rule. Like if he's in something, there will be things that you like about that movie. It's kind of like the Harry Dean Stanton rule as well.
And like
William Sanderson as
Sebastian.
As Sebastian, also fantastic.
Yeah.
Has a whole life as that character.
Yeah.
That is not written, but you see and feel when he falls back in love with when he knows that they're replicants and is excited about it and has a genuine like love for them.
This is also, by the way, I would add like a moment where just things like the set design add to characterization. His apartment is possibly the weirdest thing going on in what is already a weird film, but I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, I wanted an apartment like that. Actually, that's one of the things that this movie did. Brian James as Leon. Like you could completely ignore how important that role is, but when he witnesses Zora's death and is heartbroken about it, it's important to see that. Joanna Cassidy, of course, you mentioned it is a murderer's row. I wanted to just back up for a second and the questionable things line.
Yes.
A thought that I had watching this, again, it is a more subtle movie and it's interesting how it changes as one viewer changes. But a thing that I thought about is how cruel Batty is in a way that I don't want him to be.
Right.
Like it would be so much easier if the replicants were completely sympathetic.
Well, we haven't talked about Rutger Hauer, but again, this is an amazing performance. And again, in some ways, he's the doppelganger to Deckard, and Rutger Hauer is the doppelganger to Harrison Ford. In that, you're right. By any metric, this is not a good this is not a good guy. You're empathetic to his situation, but he is brutal in a variety of ways that we are told about and then we see, and yet you still like have this compelling feel for the character because Rutger Hauer imbues some sympathy for it, like some empathy for him. It's amazing. It really is.
I got to thinking about, would this be a better movie if he wasn't as cruel? But I think the cruelty is probably important.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, among other things, there needs to be an actual threat. Like it.
And a turn.
Yes, exactly. That's true. That's true, given how it ends. Yes, that's a good point. Speaking of which, all right, let's get to Act 4. We're laying on the Christ analogy pretty thick, yes? Deckard goes to Sebastian's apartment and sees Pris answer the buzzer. She ambushes Deckard by playing like a doll, but he kills her just as Roy returns.
Dan, I have to point out, if she had chosen not to go all Gymkata on him, she could have gotten away.
Probably,
like there's that weird thing where she like first of all crushes his head like a vice between her legs, which okay, fine, and then gets off to go run and set up for a
running start, Anna. That was the part that I did. Yeah, it's a little, I'd like, really, you need the running start, but okay, sure. And then like there's that brief moment of bring it on where that again, yes, he kills her. Yeah. He kills her just as Roy returns. Roy chases Deckard through the building, breaking his fingers through a wall. Roy is slowed down only by his body starting to shut down. On the roof, Deckard tries to leap to another building, but is left hanging on the edge. Roy jumps across effortlessly, and just as Deckard's grip loosens, Roy pulls him onto the roof to save him while holding a dove in his other hand.
This is where we might say Ridley Scott could have pulled back.
Yeah. This was like a...
Just half a stop. Just like...
I'm not going to lie. There was a small...
Like, have doves in the background.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Like, have some doves in the background, maybe. You know?
I mean, it's a little John Woo. Only John Woo can pull off this movie.
Even John Woo wouldn't have him hold.
Right, even John Woo would have been like, dude, I think you're overdoing it with the doves. Like, maybe that, you know. But yeah, I have to admit, again, it was a moment where I almost laughed. Where like, we haven't seen him before holding a dove, and then suddenly he's on the roof holding a dove. I'm like, wait, where did the dove come from? It was a little weird.
Yeah. As
Roy dies, he laments that humans haven't seen what he sees, and that his memories will be lost in time, like some metaphor. I don't know.
As it's raining,
some metaphor about crying in the rain, or well, whatever. No one's going to remember that. Yeah. Gaff shows up and congratulates Deckard, noting that Rachel will not live all that long. Deckard returns to his apartment to retrieve Rachel, who is still alive. While exiting, Deckard notices a small origami unicorn that Gaff left on the floor. And they all live happily ever after with Rachel's hair down. Okay. First of all, Anna, for those of you who are watching the video recording of this, I want to applaud Anna. Her hair was perfect, like replicant. You looked like Joanna Cassidy before she goes into the hairdryer, which is amazing.
The really
by the
cool
way.
hairdryer.
Really cool. Yeah, no, I love that
hairdryer. I want one.
It was. There needs to be a list of like tech that doesn't exist, but like the sci-fi, like it should exist because it looks like it's amazing. It's like the waffles, the takeout waffle thing in The Expanse. All right, let's get to the biggest controversy of the film, with its multiple iterations, is whether Deckard...
Just not the rape scene, weirdly.
Sorry, yes, it isn't.
Okay, it's true.
It really isn't. I'm not making this up, Anna. You know.
Yeah.
It's whether Deckard is a replicant or not. Ridley Scott, I think, said before that he is one, and there are certainly visual cues to suggest this is so. I gotta say, I agree with both Harrison Ford and Rutger Hauer, who have both like talked about this, that this interpretation kind of rips the guts out of the film. What do you think?
So, a few things. One is that there are visual clues.
Yeah.
And the two big ones, in case people aren't knowledgeable, the eye thing. There is so all of the replicants, and I did not realize until I was researching for this conversation that the eye thing was completely intentional and engineered. They used a device, a half mirror device, to shine in the actor's eyes along with a small light to create that reflective glow that all the replicants and the fake owl all have. And there is a scene, it's actually when Deckard says, "I won't go after you, but others will," where Deckard's eyes
look like that. Right.
Look like that. The other big clue is the unicorn.
Right.
Which you did not mention, but there's a part where Deckard falls asleep at the piano and has a dream of a unicorn. Right. And what the interpretation is that he has never, that's one of those things he's never told anyone, but if Gaff leaves a unicorn, that means that it's a memory that was implanted. So Deckard's replicant. Also, in order for, we talked briefly about this before we started recording, which is in some ways Blade Runner 2049 ruins this movie.
Yes. Even though, by the way, I mean, well, we haven't done it yet. Blade Runner 2049 is a great movie. We should do it at some point, but it does weirdly not work with this film.
But it makes it canonical that Deckard is a replicant. Right. And that is what Ridley Scott has said, that is one of the reasons why he has been clear that Deckard is a replicant.
Which is a bad reason to do that, I'm just going to say. But like, okay, I mean, that is the ultimate IP as a flat circle kind of thing.
Yeah, and I was going to offer that I think the interpretation that I prefer, but we no longer have access to because of 2049, is that Deckard is neither a replicant nor a human. He is inhuman. He is a bad guy. He is ultimately, and that's what the rape scene tells us, is that he is a monster.
But is he a monster? Let me wait. Is he still a monster at the end?
He's a monster that's created by the Tyrell Corporation.
Right.
He's a monster created by Tyrell Corporation and capitalism. But he's a monster. He's been dehumanized because of all that. He's like part of the story is he has PTSD. Yeah. Like he's had a belly full of killing. Yeah. Right.
And by the way, I would actually argue that's Ford's best scene in this film. There's a brief scene after he kills I think, the first replica after kills Jorah, where he is clearly shaken up, and
Yeah.
it's the one time I felt any sympathy for Deckard.
And he calls her a woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Too.
Yeah. And it's well done.
I think that is my favorite way to look at it, is that Deckard has become a monster through the fact of having to kill all these replicants. But he's no longer human, but he's also not a replicant. But instead, yeah, sure, I guess he's a replicant.
It does make the final confrontation less, I don't know, interesting. But yeah. No,
well, because the final confrontation there is the replicant granting this monster humanity.
Right, which isn't the worst thing. Like, again, it's a grace note. It imbues his last, Rutger Hauer's last scene, Roy's last scene, with as much power as it has. And I don't know, I guess the sequel does suggest there's a world in which Deckard is somewhat redeemed. But yeah, that's a good way.
We haven't mentioned yet, since the last scene, that everyone who's a big fan may know that Rutger Hauer is responsible for that monologue being as powerful as it is. I mean, I now have read the original monologue, and I used to think Rutger Hauer wrote it, and he wrote it. What he really did was take out half of it.
He edited it.
But
there's value in that.
He made it sing.
Yeah.
He knew what words to take out. He chiseled away at the marble of that paragraph. But so many questions are raised by this movie, and I do have one specifically for you, Dan.
Yes, Anna.
Is there IR in Blade Runner?
Anna, I've seen IR paradigms you people wouldn't believe. Feminist theorists allying with realists. I watched social constructivists glitter in the dark near the Philadelphia Convention Center. All those theories will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to falsify, Anna. All right, I enjoyed that way too much. I apologize. I'm sorry. Okay, so this film gets some things right and some things wrong. The replicants get a big thing wrong about humans, and this was actually something else that legitimately bothered me throughout the film. Because Roy taunts Deckard in the end, and Leon had done it earlier, saying, quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it? And maybe this works as a critique of capitalism. I'm looking forward to hearing your commentary on that, because he then talks about being a slave. It is shitty IR theory. Okay, the essence of realism is a politics grounded in fear. All right, fear of states not surviving, fear of violence in a world of anarchy. And there are plenty of other international relations scholars, Netta Crawford, Todd Hall, Jonathan Mercer, who have all posited how emotions, including fear, play a prominent role in how actors behave in world politics. Fear is hardly unique to the enslaved classes. That is all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's absent there, but that part actually rang very hollow to me. And again, I thought it was a fundamental weakness in the sort of deeper thoughts of the film. Now, what does seem interesting in this, I think this film does sort of get right, is the crucial role that identity plays in threat assessment. All right. So there's a social constructivist concept that my former colleague, Jennifer Mitzen, has developed called ontological security, which is to say that actors need to be secure about their identity. And they often define that identity in opposition to the other. In other words, I am a man and therefore, because I am not a woman, or I'm an American because I am not Russian, what have you. What is interesting is that ontological security seeking actors often do not want to escape conflict. They need it because even sort of, dangerous things, even like perceiving another as a threat, provides ontological security. And what I do think is interesting about this film is that all the Nexus 6 replicants that we see already possess ontological security. And they don't necessarily see humans as a threat, but they're not uncomfortable about the fact that they're replicants. They know who they are and who they aren't, and they are fine with it. It is Rachel and Deckard and humans who appear to need the conflict in order to reassure themselves of their humanity. In other words, the idea is that, and maybe they're all replicants because, we've talked about this, but I do find it intriguing, the idea that there are actors in this film that want to be human, and the way they define themselves as human is by saying what they're not. And what they're not is replicants. And so this whole thing about ontological security seeking, that's shot through this film, and it's the human characters that need it, not the replicants. And that I find legitimately interesting in this sort of AI theme that we've been talking about.
I'm sorry.
You passed out for a second. I'm sorry. That was deeper than I normally go on this stuff, but
that was deep. That was quite deep. I like this idea that humans need conflict in order to reassure themselves of their humanity. Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of something I actually heard in an AA meeting recently. Mm-hmm. How's that for like
nice
kind of a
nice
where references where you wouldn't expect them, which is that we attract people to our lives that rub against our sharp edges, and that's why we have relationships. Is not to be comfortable, but to be uncomfortable.
Oh, I like
and that is how we grow and learn in relationships. If we were completely at ease with everyone in our lives, then what good would that do for us as humans? So,
well,
where AA, where the spirituality of the 12 steps, and I are meat.
The other way of thinking about meat, there's a lot of meat to this film. And so that, again, that's in some ways the way in which we can talk about it. This reminds me, I do have a question for you, Anna.
Oh, yes, Dan.
Is there a critique of capitalism in this film?
Commerce is our goal here, Dan. More human than human. That's our motto. I'm not in the business. I am the business. There's a critique of capitalism.
Yes. That was Sean Young's best line.
A Discordian asked about how The Expanse would be different if it was about replicants. And I say The Expanse is about replicants. I mean, it's the same kind of critique here. It asks the same questions as Blade Runner, which is to say, capitalism has to treat laborers as inhuman, as less than human, or as objects, as products in and of themselves. Belters have the same limited lifespan, the same alienation from the rest of humanity, and are forced into radical solutions, even violence, in order to wrest more life from the people that created them.
There's a way in which, by the way, you can argue that Belters actually have it worse. Replicants are not allowed on Earth, but they can exist on Earth as opposed to Belters. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Now, replicants, of course, are more literally a part of the capitalist system. They are literally commodities bought and sold with planned obsolescence as part of their limiting, existence, their limited existence. Now, what I want to kind of say, though, that I think is interesting, that's the more spiritual kind of question here, is what I think this movie has to say. It's that when we realize the value of our time, when we wake up, when we become aware of our impending death and our service to the system, when we become aware of how enslaved we have become, that is when we are most dangerous. We as in labor, we as in the people who have lived under the thumb of capitalism, when we wake up to the fact that our lives have been limited and are willing to risk those lives in order to live more fully.
To grow.
And to want more time to live before we die. Wake up. Time to die.
I like that, Anna. That's really good. That is really good.
And replicants would be better off forming a union.
As opposed to killing colonists, perhaps. Yes.
As opposed to killing colonists, I would say. Although sometimes, I mean, they were made through violence and subjugated through violence.
By the way, that is also one of the...
It's a reaction. It's a human reaction to subjugation, is to rebel with violence. But
I do want to say that is one of the odder elements of this film, in that it takes place on Earth, but obviously posits that there are colonies elsewhere. And I think one of the things we're supposed to believe is that the people who still live on Earth are the rejects, or like they're the ones who can't afford it. But I almost feel like that would be a really interesting movie to make. That is not this film. And so that's the way I would,
It's a little unclear, but I don't mind it, because I would prefer no hand waving to a non-satisfying hand wave in terms of what exactly is the social system going on here, that we have the rejects that live on Earth, because Sebastian says he wasn't, his illness, or
his Methuselah syndrome, he can't go,
keeps him from being able to live off-world. But it also seems like they're desperate for off-worlders, because they
keep advertising
ads everywhere. So I don't know what's going on there. It doesn't matter for the film. Sure. Let's not think through it too hard.
No. And the only reason
exists.
The only reason I bring it up is that, again, it's part of Roy's final monologue, and it's gorgeous. But it's barely talked about. You're right.
Yeah.
Cross now.
It's discordant.
It's time for Discordant Notes. This is where we take questions from our patrons and answer them in the podcast. The first question is from Ramsey. How would you do on the Voight-Kampff test? I guess my answer is this a test to see if I'm a replicant or a lesbian? Which was a good line. Again, just that's a line that I think is actually aged well. So, yeah.
I wonder, every time I've seen this movie, part of me has wondered, like, what exactly it tests. Like, what is the thing? It sounds like a lie detector test, right?
Right.
Like, it sounds like
it sounds like a polygraph,
like a polygraph, a pupil dilation or whatever. And it sounds like it's measuring emotions. I don't know how I would do, because it's not clear what the falsifying data points are, right? Is it not enough emotion, too much emotion, an emotion coming from a different place? The eyes don't match up with the emotion.
Weirdly, again, we never see a human actually take the test, so it's one of the problems. But leave it this way: it's one of those things where it's a nice piece of world building, and I like the strangeness of the test. So yeah. I don't complain about that. All right, our next question is from Zach. Which fictional characters have ever had better or comparatively fantastic last words as like tears in rain? Anna?
Okay, well, we have to point out that "time to die" is his actual last sentence.
Right. Yes.
So, but the speech. Let's go with the speech.
Let's go with the whole speech, which is a good speech. It's up there. Let's be honest. I mean,
right.
And he delivers it well.
And I actually want to point out a couple things about the speech, which is that it's been referenced a ton in other pieces of pop culture, and it has come up in some interesting places. It's in the film Soldier, which was co-written by David Peoples, who's one of the co-writers of the script.
Peoples, yeah.
And where Kurt Russell's character in the movie Soldier is said to have fought at the Battle of Tannhauser's Gate. In Tony Scott's film Domino, Keira Knightley's character has the tattoo Tears in the Rain. Rutger Hauer titled his autobiography All Those Moments, and it's also in his obituary. And also, when David Bowie's half-brother committed suicide, Bowie quoted that note in the letter he sent attached to the roses.
Oh, wow.
Which were at the funeral service.
Oh.
So
okay,
it resonates.
Yeah, it does.
With that, I'm now going to read some comical last lines. Not all comical. We've covered a few last lines on this podcast.
Yeah, we can alternate if you want. You go first.
Sure. Actually, why don't you take the first one then?
Oh, okay. I was supposed to die in France. I never even saw France.
That is from Pitch Black.
Yep. Yeah.
Which I believe we both like. We in that episode that we did, we both mentioned how much we like that line.
Yeah, it was a great line.
We haven't done this movie, but it is a great one. No, not the bees! Not the bees!
I hadn't thought of it. That might be a good Schlocker Awe episode.
Yo, yes.
I think we might need to add that. Yeah. Yeah.
That, of course, being Wicker Man.
Yes. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Just did it.
Yeah.
Perfect. And although I guess we didn't do that movie. We didn't.
No, we haven't done that movie.
We haven't done Star Wars.
We haven't done Star Wars.
Maybe we should do Star Wars.
Good view.
And then this one is all about context.
Yeah.
But I'll do it anyway. I am Iron Man.
Ooh, nice. And then finally, bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships because they knew death was better than bondage, which is from Black Panther. Killmonger.
This Killmonger. Not gonna lie, I cried.
I didn't even try to impersonate that because like Michael B. Jordan he's great in it. So yeah,
he is so good. He is the real hero of that movie.
I don't think we've done Black Panther either. That might be something we need to do.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. I think it's an incredible movie. I mean, I did not hugely love the sequel.
Yeah, no. Well,
it really misses Chadwick Boseman.
Yes, it does.
It has Michael B. Jordan for a hot second, but it misses Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh. Glass. It's the debris field. This is the stuff that we didn't get to in the rest of the podcast. Just a couple of things. Anna, how much do you have?
I have a fair amount because it's a rich text. As you said, there's lots of meat on it. Although I take from the movies contextual clues that meat is not available on Earth.
I always assumed yes, like that all animals, I assumed it was like, what was it? Plant protein or plant-based protein.
Yeah. There's some kind of ecological disaster that has befallen the planet.
Okay, I'll start. This is a small thing, but I really loved it. When Deckard is taken by Gaff to go see Bryant the first time, he is at a noodle bar and he has just gotten his noodles. What I loved is that when you see him in the car, he's still eating the noodles. Yes,
that is a nice note.
Yeah.
I was going to mention a couple of the things that it seems there's the got wrong and got right stuff about the movie.
Yeah.
A got wrong thing is everyone is smoking, just smoking up a storm.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's a got right piece. We already mentioned the newspapers being a thing got wrong and telephones being a thing got wrong. But what it got right, mile-high billboards, moving billboards like that.
And the sort of flat screen TV kind of things like that are there. Yeah, that was great.
Yep.
All the mannequins and the dolls like shot through the film are just fantastic. Both Sebastian's apartment, again, the right kind of weird. Again, when Zora is shot, just, it's a lovely little, touch there.
Mm-hmm. The photo editing machine that Deckard has in his apartment, I don't have questions.
Yeah.
Like, what's he like? Does he freelance as like a photo editor?
I just assumed that was like a standard thing for a PI or something, but I mean, it
seems to have one very specific use.
Yeah, look this way. You talk about sound editing. I love the sound that it would make when it started to zoom in. It was just a cool noise. Yeah.
Well, it just sounds like a photo. It sounds like a camera kind of zooming, right? Yeah. It is a cool little machine, but I just don't know what it's doing there.
Yeah. You talked about tech that like you want to exist. The hair dryer was great. Also, the egg boiler. I love the egg boiler. Wanted to see more of that.
I did want to also just call attention to some of the writing that is really good. Some of the great quotes.
Yeah.
I'm twice as quit now is a great line. And he's a goddamn one-man slaughterhouse. The way that Emmett Walsh delivers that line is also very good.
You're right about it, Walsh, by the way. Like, literally, he's on the screen for, like, maybe total 5 minutes. And, like, it's just a perfect, character. Yeah. Again, the street scenes, the costuming, I love that there are Hare Krishnas. You can see Hasidic Jews in the background. The hats, like, all of it is just, it's not even there's a ton of time, but like it was almost distracting watching all of it. And I that's the thing I would actually watch again and again and again, just like a YouTube clip showing all of the street scenes.
Yeah. And I actually guess I have less than I thought, because a lot of this is just my notes about terrible the Tyrell Corporation is. Something I wanted to bring up in my discussion of the critique of capitalism actually is this idea we create a cushion of emotions and consequently can control them better, which by the way is something that Adorno would really have gotten on board with.
Yep.
The idea that we are more easily manipulated as consumers if you give us something to be emotionally involved with, if you subsume our ideas about our own life and give us something false, give us a false consciousness, you would say.
Okay, I've only got three more things. First, I did like the shout out for the Bradbury apartments. That was just a nice touch. Second, how much mascara was smudged during the making of this film? Because it was a lot. It was one thing I didn't really notice before and really noticed this time. And then finally, this actually might be my favorite shot in all of sci-fi. Like, again, I'm not a huge fan of this film, but visually it is gorgeous. There's that shot after Rachel has saved Deckard from Leon. They're back in Deckard's apartment, and Deckard takes a shot of alcohol. And as he tips the glass back, you see his blood, like in almost like a cloud-like form in the drink. And it is a gorgeous shot, because it's like backlit, and it's just, I remember seeing that and just being like blown away by it. It's just a beautiful shot. So yeah.
Yeah, there are many individual touches in this movie that make you want the movie to add up to more?
The way I would put it is the sum of the parts exceeds the whole of the film. The parts are amazing. I don't know if the whole film works on quite the level that so many others believe it
just
to.
If Carrie Fisher had played Rachel,
if nothing else, it would have given her another iconic hair role.
Yeah. That could be a whole other. I guess I could have put that in Debris Field, as I have some problems with her hair.
Yeah.
You know what I also meant to put in Debris Field is that it's kind of funny where Emmett Walsh's character says Rachel's disappeared, and then she's like right there.
Yeah, no, I remember seeing that. I was like, well, that's awfully convenient, isn't it? She's like literally across the street. By the way, not for nothing, but also like when Roy says Deckard in their final confrontation, Roy hasn't seen Deckard. He has no idea who Deckard is. There was no reason that he should actually know that Deckard's name. So, that's another weakness of the film, in that the final fight is interesting. And again, the actors act the hell out of it, but there's no relationship between the two of them. So that also lessens it a little bit.
Oh, and it's funny because that is not something like as a viewer, I think you even really notice, because it's their chemistry as antagonists is immediate.
You know what? That's a good way of putting it.
They have much better chemistry than Rachel.
They do.
Deckard.
They absolutely do. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. Like, again, like in a plot perspective, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really make any sense, but on the screen, it totally makes sense in a way that Rachel.
You believe that they have been opposed to each other for a long
eons.
time.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of putting it. I like that. That's good.
I think that we might have reached the end of our discussion, although I will happily watch this movie again at some point. Mm-hmm. Like it isn't a favorite movie, but it bears repeated viewings. I can see putting it on again.
Yeah. Live this way. I now want to do
5 years.
I want to do 2049 at some point. I think like it would be interesting.
I will watch Ryan Gosling do just about anything. So
same for me with Ana de Armas. So yeah.
Oh, she's very good.
She's really good.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. And we both love Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve. Yes.
So, and we're of course we already have talked about that movie.
Yeah. Or at least you will have heard us. You will have already heard us talking about that film. Yeah.
We just talked about it.
Yeah.
Just recently. For our live show.
It's an implanted memory, don't you remember? Yes.
Our live show that went so well, so many people turned out.
I mean, I don't know about you. I was not expecting that unicorn to be like riding in the background. That was amazing.
All right, some closing thoughts, Dan.
You can always reach us on social media. We're on Blue Sky, which is now open to everyone. I am at Dan Dresner. She is at Anna Marie Cox. I have a Substack called Dresner's World. Talk about world politics there. Anna is on Instagram, and her website is www.annamariecox.com, spelled the same, pronounced differently.
And I am currently doing some guest hosting for Pete Dominic's podcast, Stand Up with Pete, to celebrate my 13 years of sobriety that I celebrate this month.
That is wonderful, Anna. Wow, that is great.
To celebrate the celebration.
Yes.
That is what I just said. And also not a bad way to describe it.
Yeah.
I'm celebrating the celebration.
Excellent. Congratulations.
And glad you all enjoyed the Dune episode, because we have a new one coming up, which is about Murderbot, I think. Yes.
Next will be Murderbot, and then after that, Clara and the Sun.
Yes. And until next time.
Keep this channel open.